The room went quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the air itself had been yanked out of my lungs. My sister's finger was still pointed, sharp, accusing, straight at my daughter's face. She is mentally behind. That was it. No hesitation, no whisper, no shame. My 13-year-old stood beside me, clutching the sleeve of my cardigan, her fingers tightening as if she could disappear into the fabric. I felt her body stiffen before she even understood the words. That hurt me the most, how her instinct already knew danger lived in our own family. We were all gathered in my parents' living room for what was supposed to be a small family dinner. That's what my mother had said on the phone. Her voice had been too sweet, too practiced. I should have known better. I always do, but I keep hoping. My sister leaned back in her chair as if she'd just shared a harmless observation, not a sentence capable of cracking a child's spine from the inside. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," she added, glancing around the room for support. And that's when I realized something worse than her cruelty. No one rushed to defend my daughter. My father stared at the table, suddenly fascinated by a stain in the wood. My mother pressed her lips together, her eyes flicking toward me, not with anger, not with protection, but with calculation, as if she was deciding how much of this she'd allow. My daughter finally looked up at me. "Mama, what does that mean?" My sister rolled her eyes. "See, she doesn't even—" "Enough." My voice came out low, shaking in a way I hated. "Do not speak about my child like that." She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, relax, you're always so dramatic. We're family, we should be honest with each other." Honest. That word landed like a slap, because honesty was never what this family practiced. They practiced silence, they practiced pretending, they practiced using moments like this to establish power, who belonged and who didn't. My daughter's school reports were excellent. Her teachers described her as thoughtful, creative, quiet, but sharp. She struggled with anxiety, yes. She processed emotions differently. But mentally behind, that wasn't ignorance, that was malice. "You embarrassed her," I said, pulling my daughter closer. My sister shrugged. Better she hears it now than gets crushed later in life. That's when I understood. This wasn't about concern, it was about ownership. My sister had always hated that my daughter was different, that she didn't perform for praise, didn't beg for approval, didn't fit neatly into the roles our family demanded, and she hated me for protecting her instead of forcing her to conform. My mother finally spoke. "Let's not turn this into a scene." A scene? My child was fighting tears, and that was the concern? I picked up my bag with one hand and reached for my daughter with the other. "We're leaving." My sister smirked. "Running away won't change the truth." As we reached the door, my daughter whispered, "Auntie hates me, doesn't she?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to say no. But as I looked back at the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally, I realized something that made my stomach drop. This dinner wasn't the beginning of the cruelty. It was the first time they'd said it out loud. I didn't know then that my sister's words were only the surface, and that by the next morning, my family would take a step that proved they weren't just judging my daughter, they were planning something far worse. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls, muted notifications, a family group chat I'd silenced years ago suddenly roaring back to life. At first, I ignored it. I was making breakfast, watching my daughter carefully measure cereal like she always did, precise, calm, trying to keep her world predictable. I didn't want yesterday's poison leaking into our morning. But then I saw my mother's name flash across my screen again. "Call me, it's important." Important usually meant you're about to be blamed. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "We had a family meeting," my mother said, without greeting. A pause. A deliberate one. "You had a what?" "Last night, after you left. Everyone stayed back." Everyone. Except me. Except my child. My grip tightened around the phone. And what exactly was discussed at this meeting? My mother exhaled, the sound heavy with false patience. "Your sister is worried. We all are. about your daughter." There it was again, that careful tone, the one they used when they wanted to dress cruelty up as concern. "Worried about what?" I asked. "That she's falling behind, socially, emotionally, academically." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "Her report cards are better than half the kids in her class." "This isn't about grades," my mother snapped, her voice slipping. "It's about normalcy." Normalcy, the family religion. "She's different, and different children need intervention." I felt cold crawl up my spine. What kind of intervention? Another pause. Too long this time. "Your sister knows a specialist, someone who can assess her properly." Assess her properly. I could already hear my sister's voice behind the suggestion, smooth, superior, convinced she knew better than I ever could. "And who asked for this assessment?" I said. "Well, as her family, we thought." "No. Who asked?" Silence. Then my father's voice joined the call. "We did what we had to do." My chest tightened. "You don't get to do anything without me." "You're too emotional about this," he replied. "You've always been." That sentence took me straight back to childhood. Every time I cried, every time I protested, every time I refused to play the obedient daughter. Emotional, difficult, dramatic. I realized then this wasn't really about my daughter. It was about control they'd lost over me. "You scheduled something without my consent for my child." My mother's voice softened dangerously. "It's just an evaluation. If there's nothing wrong, then you have nothing to worry about." I looked through the doorway at my daughter, sitting cross-legged on the floor, lining up her pencils by color. She glanced up and smiled at me, small, trusting, unaware. There was everything to worry about. "I'm saying no, and if you try to go around me, you can't keep her isolated forever." My sister's voice cut in suddenly. She'd been on the call the whole time, listening, waiting. "We're her grandparents. We have rights." That word landed like a threat. I hung up without another word. A minute later, a message popped up in the group chat from my sister. "If you won't do what's best for her, we will." My hands started shaking, because that wasn't concern. That was a warning. I didn't know how far they were willing to go yet, but within 48 hours, I'd come home to discover proof that my family wasn't just talking about my daughter behind my back anymore. They were acting. I knew something was wrong the moment I walked through my front door. The air felt disturbed, like a room after an argument, even though no one was there. My daughter's backpack lay on the couch instead of its usual hook by the door. The zipper was open. My stomach dropped. "Sweetheart?" I called out, forcing calm into my voice. She stepped out of her bedroom slowly, eyes red, shoulders tense. She was holding her favorite notebook, the one she never left unattended. "They came," she said quietly. My heart started pounding. "Who came?" "Grandma and Auntie." The world tilted. I knelt in front of her, keeping my voice steady. "What did they do?" "They said they wanted to help me," she whispered. "They asked me questions, a lot of questions." Questions. The word scraped my nerves raw. What kind of questions? She hesitated, then flipped open her notebook. Inside, pages were folded down, corners bent, signs someone else had gone through it. They asked why I don't like eye contact, why I line things up, why I don't like loud rooms. Auntie wrote things down. I felt something snap inside my chest. "Did they say why they were here?" I asked. "They said Mama worries too much," my daughter murmured. "They said if I talked to them, it would make things easier for everyone." Easier for everyone. Except her. I stood up slowly, rage burning so hot it felt cold. "Did they take anything?" She nodded and reached into her backpack, pulling out a pamphlet with a smiling cartoon brain on the cover. Early Intervention Program. I didn't remember breathing for a moment. "They said you'd be happy," she added. They said this would fix me. Fix me. I grabbed my phone and called my mother. No answer. My sister next, straight to voicemail. So I drove. By the time I reached my parents' house, my hands were shaking too hard to turn off the engine. I didn't knock. I walked in like I belonged there, because once upon a time, I had. My sister was at the dining table, papers spread neatly in front of her. My mother stood beside her, nodding along like a witness instead of an accomplice. "What did you do to my child?" I demanded. My sister didn't even flinch. "We talked to her." "You interrogated her," I snapped, "without me." My father stepped forward. "Lower your voice." "No," I said. "You came into my home. You told my daughter she was broken." "She needs support," my sister replied calmly, "and you're too emotionally compromised to see it." There it was again. That word. Compromised. "You think I'm unfit," I said, realization settling like ice. My sister didn't deny it. "We're documenting everything," she said, tapping the papers, "in case things escalate." "Escalate how?" I whispered. My mother finally met my eyes. "We just want what's best for her." I laughed, bitter and hollow. "You mean you want her to fit?" Silence fell heavy. Then my sister said it, soft, deliberate. "If necessary, we'll involve professionals who can override you." I turned and walked out before I did something I couldn't take back. That night, my daughter slept curled against me, her fingers clutching my shirt like an anchor. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment I'd ever trusted my family. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about help. This was about removing me from the equation. I thought their worst move was behind me, but 3 days later, a sealed envelope arrived at my door, proving my sister hadn't been bluffing, and that my family was now officially my enemy. The envelope was thicker than a normal letter, cream-colored, official. My full legal name printed across the front in black ink. No mom, no affection, no warmth, just ink and intent. My daughter handed it to me when I came back from work. "It came today," she said. "The mailman asked if you were home." I nodded and thanked her, already feeling the weight of it before I opened it. Inside were copies, printed statements, highlighted notes, typed observations. My sister's handwriting ran along the margins like she was annotating a stranger's life. Subject shows signs of emotional delay. Mother appears defensive and in denial. Child exhibits dependency behaviors. My hands started shaking so badly the pages rattled. They had turned my child into a case file. At the bottom was a formal notice, a request for a mandated evaluation, filed by concerned family members, citing the child's best interests. They hadn't put their names on it. Cowards. My daughter watched my face carefully. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. "No," I said instantly, pulling her into my arms. "You have done nothing wrong. But Auntie said if I didn't get help, people might think you're not taking good care of me." That sentence hollowed me out. They were planting doubt in her, about me. That night, after she fell asleep, I read every page again, slowly, methodically, and that's when I noticed something that shifted my fear into something sharper. Contradictions. They'd exaggerated, twisted timelines, quoted conversations that never happened, claimed behaviors I'd never seen, and worst of all, they spoke about her, never to her, as if she were an object, not a person. This wasn't concern. It was a narrative, and narratives could be challenged. The next morning, I made calls. Her teachers, her school counselor, her pediatrician, every professional who had actually spent time with my daughter. They were shocked. One teacher said, "She's one of the most self-aware students I've ever taught." The counselor paused and then said, "Has someone been pushing this idea onto her?" Yes.
Yes, they had. I compiled everything: emails, evaluations, notes of support. I documented the unauthorized visit to my home. I printed screenshots of messages where my sister implied I was unfit. By the time my sister called that evening, I was ready. "You're overreacting," she said breezily. "This is just procedure." You came into my house, you questioned my child without consent, and you submitted false information. Silence. Then, sharper, "Be careful." That was the moment fear finally gave way to fury. "You don't get to threaten me. You crossed a little line." She laughed softly. "You really think anyone will believe you over us?" I looked at the stack of documents in front of me, at the truth, finally organized and undeniable. "Yes," I said, "I do." She hung up. That night, my mother sent a message. "Why are you doing this to the family?" I didn't reply. Because families don't destroy children to protect their image, and I wasn't done yet. I thought gathering the truth would protect us, but the day of the evaluation arrived, and I learned too late that my sister had one final move planned, one that put my daughter directly in the spotlight.
The evaluation room was painted in soft colors meant to calm children. It didn't work. My daughter sat beside me, feet not touching the floor, hands folded exactly the way she did when she was nervous but trying to be brave. Across from us sat the evaluator, a woman with kind eyes and a voice that didn't rush. That alone gave me a sliver of hope. Then the door opened. My sister walked in, confident, polished, followed by my parents. No warning, no permission. The evaluator frowned. I wasn't informed there would be additional attendees. My sister smiled. "We're immediate family." I stood up. "You were not invited." The evaluator raised a hand gently. "Let's take a breath. This session is for the child. If your presence is disruptive, I will ask you to leave." For the first time, my sister looked annoyed. The evaluation began. My daughter was asked questions, simple ones, then deeper ones, about school, about feelings, about home. She answered quietly but clearly, choosing her words with care. Then the evaluator asked, "Has anyone ever told you there was something wrong with you?" My daughter glanced at me, then back at her. "My aunt said I was mentally behind," she said softly. "She said I needed to be fixed." The room went still. The evaluator's pen stopped moving. My sister laughed nervously. She misunderstood. "I did not," my daughter said. Her voice was shaking, but she didn't stop. "She came to my house without my mom knowing. She asked me questions and wrote things down. She said my mom makes things worse because she loves me too much." My mother inhaled sharply. The evaluator looked up, eyes no longer gentle, now focused. "Is that accurate?" No one answered. "I also want to say something else," my daughter continued, surprising even me. "I'm not broken. I just think differently, and my mom listens to me." I felt tears slide down my face. The evaluator closed her folder. "This evaluation is over, and I will be documenting serious concerns, not about the child, but about boundary violations by extended family." My sister stood up. "You can't." "I can," the evaluator interrupted, "and I am." My parents didn't look at me as they left. My sister did, but there was no triumph in her eyes anymore, only shock. Outside in the parking lot, my mother finally spoke. "You didn't have to humiliate us." I laughed, quietly, brokenly. "You did that yourselves." We didn't speak again after that. The request was denied, the file was closed, and a recommendation was made, clear, official, that my daughter be protected from further interference. That night I tucked her into bed, brushing her hair back the way I had when she was little. "Did I do okay?" she asked. "You were incredible," I said. "You told the truth." She smiled, small and tired. "I'm glad you're my mom." "So am I."
Some families betray you loudly, others do it with paperwork and smiles. I lost a sister that day. I lost parents too, but I kept my child. And I learned something that will stay with me forever. Anyone who calls a child broken to feel powerful is the one who needs fixing. Years later, people still ask why I cut my family off, but they never ask how a 13-year-old found the courage to stand up to adults who tried to erase her. And that tells me I made the right choice.